Greetings and salutations. Welcome to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Special shout out to Travis from the Magic Castle, which will be revealed later on down the road in a future episode. But before we begin, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share the show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. My guests, plural, today, first is a playwright, pianist, and composer. In 2022, she co-devised the theater piece Poetry for the People, the June Jordan Experience with Raymond O. Caldwell at Theater Alliance in Washington, D.C. The show was awarded the 2023 Helen Hayes Theater Washington Award for outstanding new play or musical adaptation, and enjoyed a second run in 2024. It is slated to run at the Fountain Theater in 2026 in Los Angeles. We will include the ticket link down below. Also set for production in 2026 is For Women Serving Time, an extended poem opera for which she composed the score with text by, and I meant to ask how to pronounce this prior and I botched it, so I'm going to Fatima Key. I'm skip it. I'll get it from Adrienne in a second. Produced by In Serious Opera in Washington, D.C. Her community collaboration performance piece, The Awesome Difficult Work of Love, which was produced in Madison, Wisconsin in 2008, San Francisco in 2012, and Sedona, Arizona in 2022, will be produced in Flint, Michigan in spring of 2026, and if the ticket link is available, we will include that down below. My other guest has written and adapted new works for Theater Alliance and the Kennedy Center, including Look Both Ways, a tale told in 10 blocks from the book by 2024 MacArthur Theater. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. A tale told in 10 blocks from the book by 2024 MacArthur recipient Jason Reynolds. Prior to joining the Fountain Theater, he was the artistic director at the Alliance Theater for 6 seasons, which he directed, developed, and produced. He expanded the company's digital footprint during the pandemic, developing, directing, and producing new works from emerging local artists. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Adrienne Torf and Raymond O. Caldwell. Oh my gosh. Welcome, you guys.
Great intro.
It would have been.
That's a lot of words.
It was. So, all right, let's go back because I botched her name. Please, Fatima's...
Fatima Keshavars.
One more time.
Her last name is Keshavars.
Keshavars. Okay. Even if you would have told me that prior, if I would have asked, I would have botched it. Either way. So, well, welcome. Thanks for coming on. You guys got... a lot going on right now, and I don't even know where to start because there seems to be a collaboration between the two of you for years. So let's start with that. How did this collaboration start between the two of you, and then we'll unpack things as we go.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I was supposed to direct the opera. I was looking at the ceiling, and then I saw the sky, which was a co-production with the In series. And it so happened that as we were moving in to produce that opera, the pandemic began to surge. And so as an artistic leader, I thought, maybe not opera in small spaces.
Okay, hang on. Can I jump into that? Not to interrupt. Yeah. Why not opera? Because it's oral.
Yeah.
So why not opera?
Well, I think at that moment, Omicron was surging, and we were given the science of droplets, and so all I could imagine were open-mouth singers spewing at audience members. And so both me and the artistic director of In Series thought, maybe not right now. But I began researching and fell in love with June Jordan, and eventually... Tim, who was the artistic director at In Series, ended up putting me in contact with Adrienne, and I got on the phone with her, and I just started telling her, I I was so in love with June Jordan and everything that I had read, and it just so happened that as we began talking, there were just so many people that were in my life, particularly my mentor, Antezaki Shange, who was very close to June as well, and I was learning that through this very first conversation, and soon we agreed, hey, let's just make a play using June Jordan's brilliant poetry and writing so as to celebrate her, amplify her, and make sure people know about her.
So, Adrienne, I'm going to swing this back to you. So, because I'm not familiar, so forgive me, I'm not familiar with June Jordan.
That's fine.
And so, what was your fascination, for lack of a better word, with her? And then, and I'm going to ask this question, and forgive me because it's going to be really embarrassing. Is she still with us?
June passed away in 2002.
Okay.
June and I were artistic collaborators and life partners. She wrote the libretto for the opera that Raymond was set up to produce back in 2020, I think, 2021. And because of my connection and the relationship that June and I shared both artistically and in life, I was actually delighted when Raymond first got in touch with me. And what I remember about the conversation was you first said, in a very deferential way, I hope it's okay, that we're getting in touch with you. Can you just give us some pointers about how to find out more about June Jordan? So for people in your listening audience who also are still not known much about June, June was one of the most widely published African-American poets, essayists. She also wrote for the theater. She was a teacher, an activist. The last, 10 years of her life, she was a professor at the University of California, Berkeley.
Great.
So Raymond called me and said, can you talk to me just for a little bit about June Jordan?
Sure.
As you mentioned, the next thing you know, we are co-devising this piece together. And it was staged only 2 months after our first conversation.
Sure. Forgive me for real quick. I'm going to put a quote unquote pause on this because I'm fearing that your mic is not working. I apologize for your loss. I'm sure it was a very, a very collaborative relationship, and it sounds like you had a lot of things to share. And so Raymond, if you don't mind, talk about your relationship and how you came into the whole dynamic of this thing, of this collaboration.
Yeah, because I was the artistic director at Theater Alliance, I wanted to be sure that folks knew and celebrated June Jordan the way that I thought she deserved to be celebrated. I was ashamed, and when I talked to Adrienne, I told her I was really ashamed that I too didn't know June Jordan. And yet, as soon as I began reading her poetry, something really unlocked for me. And so through the devising and development process with Adrienne, I fell even more deeply in love with June. And so I wanted to be sure that as an artistic director, as a producer, that we were using our space, our platform to celebrate and amplify this brilliant poet activist who I don't think is getting her flowers. And so I wanted to be sure she got her flowers.
Sure. So how does, because we're talking about playwriting.
Yeah.
How does poetry come into playwriting in this regard? And I don't know if that's Raymond. I don't know if that's you. I don't know if that's Adrienne. How does that come into play? Obviously, we've got the greats. We're talking about Shakespeare, of course, and whatnot. But how does that come into play? Developing poetry into playwriting.
Yeah, the conversation that we had very early on was that, how am I, as a writer, to ever write anything that would stand up to June's brilliant poetry? How could I tell her life story without her words? And so Poetry for the People is actually a celebration of June Jordan's work, but I think it also is purposefully and hyper-intentionally weaving June's poetry, her essays together to not only teach folks who she is and was, but also their own relationship to their own activism, their own relationship to, I think, what June really was leading through her whole life was this real revolution of love. Yeah. And so we use June's writing to tell her life story. And so that's how poetry is woven in. We actually hear June's poetry from and through her entire life. We also hear poets who have been inspired by June, her students. So poetry is the vehicle by which we learn about June.
Okay, so God, there's so many things. You said some stuff that like I'm all over the place with this in this regard now. So, because usually poetry is kind of one voice, if that makes sense, is right. Mm. And I'm guessing that you have multiple voices within this. Well, opera, and that's what I want to get into as well. Where it's like, we've got poetry, then we have voices, now we have opera, we have music, yeah. And how does that come to a culmination? So, I'm assuming that it's objective is not the right word, if that makes sense. So, if it's a poem. June's poem, I'm assuming it's one voice. So how do you unpack that and present it with multiple characters?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And in my mind, I'm like, I don't know if this is the right thing. Like you take Poe, for instance, and you can like the Telltale Heart or something like that. And there's multiple characters in that story or poem. But how does this come into play with June's work, and are there multiple characters, and how does that present itself in this particular play? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. June was a poet of the people. And I think about every single poem that she writes, she is telling a story. She is teaching us something. She is asking us something, to think about something. The way that we weave June's poetry together through the entire play is each of her poems, June is often writing for or about certain moments in life, certain individuals in her life. She's incredibly prolific. And I think about all of the people that have not only been inspired by June, but who also who have a story to tell about June. And so the play is about teaching people, of course, who June Jordan is, but through her own words and through the experiences of other people. So throughout the play, we hear the experiences of June's students, fellow activists, folks throughout her entire life to tell her very full life story. Sure. So this ensemble of 6 women take on different characters from June's life. They also all take on June Jordan herself. So that's how poetry is woven in and through. And again, June is not only writing poetry, she's also inspiring musicians, and all of that is interwoven through the show.
Okay. And so, Adrienne, how did this come into play for you? What was the inspiration? And then how did you weave everything in? Like, it's like, this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to celebrate, for lack of a better word, your relationship and come up with this culmination of things for June.
June and I wrote together in a way that came out as songs, some of which we performed together with June doing spoken word, some of which were for singers, some of which were for larger ensembles. And a number of those pieces are included in Poetry for the People, the June Jordan Experience. Okay. June's poetry was also set to music by other people. Leonard Bernstein was a big fan. He included a piece of hers in the Centennial piece that he wrote. Bernice Johnson Regan, whom some of your listeners might know of, is the co-founder of Sweet Honey in the Rock. Okay. And June had a very close artistic relationship, and some of Sweet Honey and the Rock's better known songs actually have lyrics that June wrote. The opera that first brought Raymond to learn about June was composed by John Adams, arguably, the most famous living American opera composer,
right.
Directed by Peter Sellers.
Oh,
so
wow.
there is,
okay.
there is, along with the poetry and along with excerpts from June's memoir, the multimedia that has footage of June in interviews, footage of June delivering her own poetry, there are all of these musical elements as well. I came into it, I have to say, because it's important to me, as it is important to Raymond, to bring June to as many people as possible. And I will add to it that Raymond is just an extraordinary storyteller.
Okay.
And so I would bring information and suggestions and, hey, you should really look at this aspect of her life, or, hey, here's a note that she wrote to my mother that would make sense in telling the story. And he crafted it into a really beautiful portrait of June.
Sure. Let me get into a personal aspect, and
Okay.
apologies if I'm being, I don't want to say insensitive, but like, what is that? What's the importance of that, of bringing June's work to the world, that you think it, that, I'm sorry, I'm trying, again, I
think it's a fair question.
I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like, and I'm not saying that it's not important. I just, I want to know what's the inspiration behind that.
I'll speak for myself. My inspiration was partly out of love for her.
Sure.
But also primarily out of a recognition that when people hear June's poetry, they feel connected in a way to it that they don't often feel to poetry, because June had an incredible gift for connecting personal experience to things that are say, around us in our communities, in our families, in our neighborhoods, and then further extending it to things that are happening in the world. And because she creates these rings of connection from personal to lived to global, a lot of people find that she is saying what they are thinking and experiencing in their own lives. And she does so with an incredible level of craft and knowledge. I mean, she's an expert poet. She is also an activist in the sense that her poetry heartens people to go ahead and speak their own truth, to say it through poetry, and to engage in activism in a way that works for them.
Sure, okay. And then, total tangent, why opera?
Opera, well, June wrote the libretto for an opera. She was asked to by the greatest living American composer and director, Peter Sellers, and John Adams asked her to write the libretto to I Was Looking at the Ceiling and Then I Saw the Sky. It is sort of coincidental to that I am getting to compose music for a piece for the same opera company that was originally with Raymond going to produce that opera. I Was Looking at the Ceiling and Then I Saw the Sky.
So how did this relationship develop? And outside of said relationship, how does it, are there conflicts? Are there, like, how do you work? Yes, between the two of you, because again, like, it's like, how does this work? Because obviously you both have different visions, or maybe you have the same vision. I don't know. So how does that work? And what advice do you have for somebody who's like, who might have a co-producer, but a co-writer, or whatever you want to say.
A collaboration.
Yeah, in that regard. So how do you, this is what I'm thinking, this is what, like, who's right, who's wrong, all that goodness, if that makes sense.
First.
Yeah. And has that ever happened? And I'm looking at your face, I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay, so let's unpack this, because I'm sure that there's other writers that may have a collaborator, and they're having those issues. They might have those issues, and how do you overcome those? issues.
Yeah, I will say that Adrienne has taught me so much about the art of collaboration.
Okay.
But I think that goes back to and connects completely to June. As we look at June and track June's life, the number of collaborations that she had with other artists were phenomenal. The number of other poets, the number of musicians, the number of just artists who talk about June and how inspired they were by their collaboration with her. And so it was so interesting going into this collaboration because Adrienne brings that same collaborative spirit. The thing that I love about, I think, our work is that we have a shared vision of why it is we want to tell this story to people. We want folks celebrating and amplifying June's name. For me personally, I will say that I often am frustrated when people of the global majority, particularly Black women, are forgotten in history, when their names are erased in history. And June Jordan is a name that was erased in history. And so one of the early conversations that I had with Adrienne was my frustration around that. Why don't more people know and celebrate June? Because what's so interesting in this moment right now, in the moment that we exist in the administration that we currently are under, June's words are actually speaking to a whole new generation of activists. Younger generation of activists are picking up her work and realizing, oh, damn, June was telling us this so long ago. And so the center of our collaboration is always about celebrating June. What is going to get folks to understand June most? Sure. And so to folks who are collaborating with writing partners, the thing that I have learned in this collaboration is center the work. If you center the work, if you center the goals, and it is actually not about your ego, because ego is what gets in the way of the art always. And so this is ego-less. This isn't about either of us, in fact. It's about June.
Okay.
Yeah.
So have there been, for lack of a better word, confrontations between the two of you where it's like, no, you're wrong, this is how it is, especially because you have more of a connection to June than Raymond, you might. I don't know. I'm assuming. So are there things like, no, you've got this wrong. I get where you're going, but I don't know. You tell me.
I think it's a fair question.
Sure.
It's a fair question, and I'm sure it's the kind of thing that a number of collaborators grapple with in their own work together. I have not experienced a single minute of conflict in this collaboration, and I'm not glossing over anything.
Sure, no.
People have asked about this before. They've asked me in separate conversations, and what this has taught me, this collaboration, and why it is extraordinarily important to me is this. June was the one and only person I ever wanted to collaborate with.
Okay.
I did not think I would ever have an opportunity to do something that was as fulfilling and challenging and full of love as what June and I did together for 19 years. Okay. So after her passing, people would approach me, and I didn't have the heart, nor the interest, nor the faith that a collaboration with anybody else would equal that one until Raymond came along. And I think when I try and deconstruct it for myself, what makes it this way for me, it has to do with the fact that Raymond has an extraordinary level of craft and knowledge. He is a gifted storyteller. So in all of those ways, I get to sit back and see someone at work up close that blows my mind often.
Sure.
But the thing that is so fundamental to this collaboration, and I would say to any successful collaboration, is trust. Raymond can suggest something that seems, like from completely out of. Well, for example, the name of the show for the first production, we had to come up with a name, and I was at a loss. Raymond said, "Poetry for the People: The June Jordan Experience." Okay. And I have to admit, I thought to myself, the what? like the Jimi Hendrix experience? Like, what are we talking about here? But I knew to trust that, and as we have seen this show now coming into its third iteration, It makes complete sense. It does. The trust is a combination of what you talked about, Raymond, which is knowing that we have the same desire for this, combined with a mutual respect for each other's craft and a mutual respect for each other's artistic intuition. Okay. And so I never question. I sit back, I enjoy, we meet, I'll ask, is this what you're looking for? It happened today.
Yeah.
We're coming up with new music for a thing in there, and I came up with something. It's easy for me to ask, is this what you were looking for? And what I heard you say was not quite, I'm looking for a little more of this, a little less of that.
And let's explore that, like, because you guys open next month?
In a couple weeks.
Okay. Right. Okay. So all of a sudden, oh my God, like, is this what you're looking for? Here's some new music. And how does that affect the cast? So I don't even know where to start with that whole thing. You just dropped a bomb on me, baby. So,
I mean,
is this what you're looking for? How does that, let's start from the beginning. Like, you just introduced something completely new. And so, yes. And like so today? How does that affect you? How does it affect you? How does it affect the cast if you're opening in 2 weeks?
I think that's a wonderful question, because I think that, the thing about the room, and I think about this as a director as well, because you're both the writer and also the director.
Right, yeah.
I think about the room that we're crafting, right? I also think about the limitless possibilities that June's poetry opens up for all of us. And so I think about that as I'm thinking about the room and the space that we're creating.
When you say the room, what do you mean?
The rehearsal room. And we all have to be in the
Copy.
rehearsal
Okay,
room.
got
Both
yes.
are in the rehearsal room. And to your point, the actors are also in that room.
Right.
And so for me, best idea wins. We are serving the story. We're serving this moment right now. And what does this moment need? And so the thing that I love about our relationship is that, Adrienne, I will say, it needs to be, and I'll say it happened today. Today I said, no, it's kind of like wah, 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 wah. And then she sits down at the piano and she's like, something like this, and then she tickles away. And then the cast is sitting there like, what the hell are they doing? But then we click into something, and then the cast watch us collaborate. Yeah. They watch us go through a process of, yeah, that's it. No, that's not it. Ooh, yay, that is it. They watch us discover, so that when I'm doing that with them as well, they can feel that same openness, that same sense of collaboration. Because we're all looking to tell this story collectively together. So best idea wins.
That's interesting. There's a form of magic, for lack of a better word, there. And what I love about that is that it's not coming from a place of frustration, where it's like, can we get our act together? Where it's more of like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm being part of something. What do you think the key of that is when it comes to that, if that makes sense? Where it's like, like from a director's point of view, where I might become like, look, I don't know, I might change my mind. And I can see, like, look, this is how I see it, and I might change my mind later on. You might get frustrated, but it sounds like for you guys, they're more inspired than frustrated. So what do you think the key to that is?
From my perspective?
Yeah, of course.
You will never hear the word no in a rehearsal space that Raymond creates. There's never a sense that anyone, actors, stage manager, myself, ever needs to feel like we fell short. Because we're not moving towards something that is set in a way that we either get there or we don't. We are creating together. There's a script. We are not yet locked. We have not yet locked the script, but that's going to happen the day after tomorrow. Sure. It's not like the actors are being asked to create the substance of this piece. There's plenty there to work from, but now we're working on how to stage it, how to convey it to our audiences in the most effective way. and in the way that speaks the most truly to the story. You never hear no. You hear a lot of, not good job, because that's pretty pat,
Sure.
but a lot of yes. You hear a lot of yes, actually yes. And so I can easily say to Raymond, is this what you had in mind? Because there's no fear. There's absolutely no need for fear around creative input. There's no sense that anyone in the room is going to feel shame.
Yeah.
And I think that's unusual in almost any performing art.
Well, I think that it also goes back to improv as well. The whole thing of the improv is like yes and. You know, it's like no, but that's what you threw out, then that's what we're running with.
But to be clear, this is not improvised.
No, 100%, 100%. I think that it's a
spirit.
Exactly. It's a fathom of life, if you will, that we kind of, we just have to take it all in stride and say whatever's presented with us becomes a yes and. Like, this is life, this is what is presented. Yes, and I'm going to run with it, if that makes sense. So, yeah, it's in that regard for you guys. Yeah, absolutely. So the question that I have is, because you said this is the third iteration. Right? So how much has changed?
Lots.
Okay. So
And it's,
all right, let's start from the very beginning.
It's never been, it's not like, oh, we're going to improve it this time. It's
Right.
like, we have a fuller story to tell, or we have a different way of telling this story. And I'm going to turn to you absolutely to talk about this.
Yeah, you know, the thing I've loved about this process is once upon a time, particularly in the theater, once upon a time as shows moved to Broadway, they would have a lot of out-of-town tryouts. You would have multiple productions, and that would give the team a lot of time to learn about the work. We've had a lot of time to learn about the work. And the reason that we call it the June Jordan experience is because I've always wanted it to be an experience for the audience. Sure. It is experiential. So that means that every single time we come back to it, we're reevaluating, well, what was our experience with the audience before, and how do we enhance that experience? And so each iteration, we've learned from previous audiences, we've learned from previous ensembles of actors, we've learned from the story, and so this iteration, I think, I'm proud of every single version of it.
Sure.
And this version, I think we are really getting at something, we are touching something that I am just so proud of. It's palpable in the room, and we're hearing it. So,
what do you think that is?
I think I'm really fascinated by the fourth wall and the elimination of the fourth wall, particularly in these experiences. This round of the script involves direct interaction with the audience. The thing about activism that I think I've found so frustrating over the last couple of years is that I think that oftentimes activism has taken a back seat. Everyone is allowed to pat themselves on the back and say they're an activist without doing shit. and so this piece, June is actually always asking us to do more. And so this version of the script actually asks the audience to get involved in the poetry, the writing as well. It is nothing that is just passive. You are involved in the experience. And so yeah, I'm proud of where the show has grown and how it has grown.
So what's changed? Where was it at step one, and where is it at step 3?
Ooh.
Well, first of all, we only had 2 weeks to write it in step 1.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, gosh darn it, you guys, you can't throw things at me like that. So
That's true.
because it's like, and the reason why I say that is like, I'm sure that there's listeners that I don't have time, and then you're like, oh, we have 2 weeks. Yeah. So you produce something, not in the literal produce thing, but like wrote something in 2 weeks, where some people are like, oh, I don't have time, and I need 6 months or whatever. So how did that work out? We're talking about writing something. You have a concept, and we have 2 weeks. And what was the, not deadline, but what the catalyst that was like, okay, all right, we're going to do this. We've got 2 weeks. Go.
There was a deadline.
Yeah,
actually.
there was a hard deadline. We knew that.
Right, sure.
And I think the thing that motivated us, I think the two of us early on, was not only learning about one another in our collaboration, but actually Adrienne teaching me about June.
Is this the first time that you guys work together with this?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So that's even. Gosh, darn it. Okay, so how did that work? And how? So where's the introduction?
Yeah.
For the relationship, and where is the patience?
Yeah.
Where, like, we have 2 weeks, we just met each other, and yeah.
I'll say that as a producer, I knew that because I also was producing it, and so I knew that there was a deadline. I also never wanted that to be part of our process. Very early on, Adrienne and I would get on the phone, we'd get on Zooms, and Adrienne would tell me stories about June. I'd ask her questions about poems that I read or essays of June's that I had just read and would ask for context. She'd point me in whole other directions, and then I'd go reading and I'd go investigating, I'd go studying, and then I'd bring back even more to her. And it started really as Adrienne, teach me everything about June, please, and let me ask as many questions as possible. And every single time I thought Adrienne wouldn't have an answer or didn't have an answer, if she didn't have an answer directly, she sent me in the direction of one of June's poems that answered the question brilliantly. And so it was this like excitement for one another every single, and it was like we were meeting at like 8:30 in the morning because I was in DC, and Adrienne was in Berkeley, and so we were meeting so early in the morning.
Yeah.
But those were some of the happiest mornings for me because I was just learning so much.
Yeah.
Did Raymond reveal anything about June that you were not aware of?
That's a great question.
Because obviously he's doing his research and whatnot, and he's asking you to, give him everything that you knew.
Right.
So I'm curious if he presented anything that you were not aware of.
I'm sure. Not anything in particular that
Sure.
comes to
That's
mind,
fair,
but I
yeah.
think I'm sure that, through these different iterations, you've brought things into the script that, there's something in the current script where I put a little note the other day during the table read where I thought, where's this poem from? And I needed to go back and look for it. What I can say definitively is that Raymond's perspective has given me a chance to see June in a different way than I had before. And that, to me, is a celebration because, again, we're talking about a shared love, if you will.
Sure, yeah. So going back and totally going on a different tangent in this regard, because I want to approach the playwriting aspect, because we're talking about poetry, and we're applying it to opera, which is the approach that you guys took. And so I'm curious, obviously there's a meter rhythm in poetry that is going to be different from opera. So were there any changes? So hypothetically, if somebody, this is stupid and goofy, but let's say that somebody wanted to make an opera out of the Iliad, and obviously the Iliad is in a certain rhythm, and but now we're gonna. So was there anything like that? Was like June's poetry, had a certain. I don't want to say pentameter. That's not the right word, but you know what I mean. Like there was a rhythm and pacing to it, to where, oh, guys, this doesn't work. So how do we tweak it?
Yeah.
And is there a creative license behind it, if that makes sense?
So that's a wonderful question. The thing that I love about June, and you hear it in the play as well, if you want to think about June Jordan, then you also have to think about music. Mm-hmm. Right. Because her poetry is music on the page. Sure, yeah. And so that is something that, of course, we take into consideration as we are compiling the script. I think our process really began by me and Adrienne thinking about what is quintessential June? What are the poetic pieces and writings that are iconic June Jordan? That if we are telling June Jordan's story, have to be a part of this play.
Right.
Let's start there. So we began by organizing both poems and essays into what we called a big research document. And that research document was 20, 30 some odd. It was massive. It was huge. And so it started with us just throwing as many things into this research document. What is quintessential June? And from there, after we had like 50, 60, 70 pages worth of material, we're like, okay, this isn't the script, but where do we start? We began gathering and moving all of the like information together. Poems about what it was to be a woman, poems what it was to be Black, poems about her son, poems about... And so grouping like items together. And then slowly began weaving, all right, so if we're telling her story, where do we begin? And how do we go about doing that? And so interlocking the poems, and there are not poems that we utilize that we do not perform or use all of the full poem.
Yeah,
we're using full poems.
We wouldn't do that.
We wouldn't cut the poem in any way.
Okay,
So we're
great.
using her
Yeah.
full poems as they are, and those poems are interwoven and interconnected with both June's essays and ideas, because she was a prolific essayist, her interviews, because she also is a fabulous public speaker, and then what everyone in the world has to say about June Jordan. And everyone has something to say about June Jordan, because she has inspired seemingly every great activist and poet that we can think about today.
Sure.
So that was the process that we began, and soon we started, I will say that I started listening to the music. I started trusting Adrienne's ear, a brilliant composer and musician. And so slowly, as we began collaborating and moving things around and asking ourselves questions and listening to it ourselves, that was the process of building the script.
Sure. So Adrienne, in that regard, how taking somebody else's work and applying music to it, how did that come to play? And like, what was the process in that? And I'm assuming that this isn't all musical, that there's probably some dialogue in there as well. So where does dialogue come into play, and who was responsible for that, if you will? But there's a whole, process that goes behind that. So you've got June's work. There's a whole story behind. I don't know. So,
I think your questions make a lot of sense, because we're not telling this story in the most conventional way.
Which is great, and I love that, because again, like, I don't know listeners who might have a concept and how do I approach this? What do I do?
Right.
And that's the process I want to approach as well.
Sure. And just as a little bit of background clarification. Sure. Yes, June wrote the libretto for an opera that Raymond was planning to produce 5-6 years ago.
Okay.
Yes, I'm just finishing writing music for an opera that is going to be produced in D.C. and performed in March and April.
Sure.
This piece is not hinged to opera, not the form. So we're not worried about how we fit this content into a pre-existing structure. That said, a number of the pieces that are set to music are ones that June and I wrote together over our 19-year collaboration.
Okay, sure.
Others there's one from the opera that June and John Adams wrote. There are other pieces of music that come from her other collaborations that are in there. And then there is a lot of spoken stuff in between, and this is where you should take over.
Yeah, so, I'm thinking about not only what June actually said about her life, about what her ideas of the world, but also thinking about what other people had to say about June. June has a beautiful memoir in which she articulates the early part of her life. And so in there we get to hear firsthand her opinions about what her childhood was. Now, the thing about being a public figure is lots of people have lots of things to say about you as well.
Ain't it the truth?
And so how do you tell a full story that way? Then you actually begin pulling on those resources as well. So throughout the play, we get to hear firsthand accounts from very famous poets, but also from the news media, what was happening in June's life. It is also important, I think, for me to tell the story of the time period as well. I think we find ourselves in cycles. And it's so interesting because much of what it is that June writes about, we seemingly, as we look at our world today, are like, oh, damn, here we are again, full circle.
Sure.
And so the historical context within which June is responding is also incredibly important. A poet doesn't work just blindly. A poet has something to respond to, and June is responding actively to her world. Sure. And so the other component of the script is, yes, what it is June has to say about her life. Yes, June's poetry. Yes, June's music and her collaborations with musicians. And also what very well-known people have to say. And also my favorite new scene that we've just added in are what her students have to say about her. I was so interested in calling and naming the play Poetry for the People because that was the name of the program that June launches at Berkeley. And that program inspires poets who have literally gone on to change the world, who have transformed the world. And so this scene actually is a moment where students from June's life actually share out what it is she did, the impact she had on their lives. And so it's important for us to demonstrate, June had major impact on very famous and well-known people, and also some of the most dynamic impact she had was on her students, because her students today are doing some of the most amazing, are literally changing the world. Yeah. And they say that June inspired her.
I would hope so.
Inspired them.
Sure. So how does we're talking about, we're pulling so many different stories, for lack of a better word, in the poetry realm, which may or may not be connected, right? And so how does that work? Like, we're going to create a story, a through line, if you will, and then we're going to insert some stuff as far as as I go back to creative license and stuff like that. So obviously there's the poetry, and then we're going to insert some dialogue as well. So how did that whole thing come to fruition, as far as this is the through line, this is the story, this is what we're going to tell from, how many different poems did you guys use?
Lots.
Exactly. So are they all connected? And then if that is or is not the case, where did you guys insert dialogue and say, okay, here's the story? Does that make sense? We're creating the story and this through line based on all these poems, and now we have to insert dialogue that coincides with what she wrote.
Did you write dialogue for this?
No, and so this is the other thing. All of the dialogue is also all found text.
Expand.
Yeah. Anytime there were interviews, anytime that there were writings where June is actually talking about, so for example, one of the very early scenes in the play is a scene between June and her father. That scene is completely devised and developed from June's autobiography.
Oh,
Those
wow.
are her words. And so it's really important, the conversation we continue to have, June is a prolific poet. Who do I, Raymond O. Caldwell, look like writing anything for the brilliant June Jordan? I shouldn't. But what I can do to honor her is I can tell her story using her words and using the words that other people have to say about her. So there is dialogue and there are scenes, but all of those scenes are all devised and developed and pulled from found text.
And if I can add to that,
please do. Yes, of course.
The fact that June was such a multifaceted poet. I think a lot of people's relationship to poetry might be simply sitting in a room where everybody is sitting stiffly in a chair and listening to somebody standing at a podium and reading something and wondering, am I allowed to clap now, right? That's not June. Yeah. June's poetry is passionate. It's sometimes very humorous. It's sometimes intense. It's always about speaking the truth. Sometimes she is talking about a very personal experience. Sometimes she's talking about something that's going on in the world. So it lends itself to doing all the things that Raymond's been able to do with it. It's not hard to pull life. You don't have to pull life from June's poetry.
Sure.
It's there.
Were there challenges that you guys have had to overcome in this, journey? In that regard, or has it just been like smooth sailing?
What not to say?
Yeah, just say it all. I want to hear it all.
Sure, there are challenges, but I never, it's not like your questions are out of the blue. It's like,
sure.
Again, it's the spirit of it. I think it would be possible to say, going back to this thing this afternoon, when you said to me, okay, we need music for this section, and I came up with something, and it's not like I was waiting for Raymond to say yes, no, maybe, and stuff. Because of the spirit of our collaboration, the trust, the incredible,
Sure.
to me, and it says something that we've gone now into our third production.
Right.
And I have not yet experienced a moment where I had to sit back and wonder, should I bite my tongue or should I
strangle Raymond?
Yeah. There hasn't been any of that.
Yeah.
And so, as corny as it sounds, none of this has been a challenge because it's all been about, we get to do this.
What do you think the recipe is for that?
Trust.
To make it
I keep coming back to trust.
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, going back to naming it the June Jordan Experience, I could have said, nah, no, Jimi Hendrix, nah, right? The experience part. But something in me said, I have seen this man work, just in the short time that we had for that first production, I have seen how this man works. And what is absolutely indisputable is that he is coming to this through such a profound sense of respect and admiration and love and, as you said, appreciation for June's place in history as a poet, as a teacher, as an activist, as a Black woman. I had no reason to challenge anything that you came up with because we were all coming at it from the same place. We came up with different ideas, but there was never a contradiction.
Is there advice you can give in that regard where people that are collaborating? I mean, you've unpacked a lot, so I'm not quite sure that you can give anything else, but if there is there anything additional that you can give from both perspectives? Adrienne's given her perspective, Raymond, do you have anything to add to that from your perspective?
Trust. I agree. Trust.
How do you build that?
And that's what I think I was going to. I think that we began building that trust over those Zoom calls. And the thing that I love about some of my favorite collaborations, this one included,
sure,
is that we constantly surprise one another by how much we love what it is we're doing. And so every single morning to sit on a Zoom and did I have 5 billion other things to do right after that meeting? Of course. But what I got to do and what I learned to do, I think, in this collaboration and with Adrienne, because I think she's so good at it, making everything else outside of the collaboration stand still. That's not what we're worried about right now. We're worried about this right now.
Right, sure.
And so to be able to hold time with just one another, I think allowed us to get to know one another very deeply as well. It came up today. It made my heart smile today because Adrienne played something and she looked at me and she was like, what do you think of that? And then before I even said anything, I was literally in thought. And I do this thing where I go to think. And she went, nope, it didn't make you smile. And she went back and played again.
Love it.
And it was like, oh my God, that is my collaborator. That's my friend. And that's someone now who even now knows me. Knows what's going to make my artistic heart smile and sing. Right. And I think the same is true with Adrienne. And so thus, that's...
Yeah.
What is different? Well, no, I shouldn't say what is different because we already established the trust aspect. Because it sounds like you've had collaborations in the past that may or may not have gone in a good direction. So what's different in this besides the trust aspect? Or is that really the big difference, if that makes,
we've said this, and you've asked
sure.
But I think if I were to boil it down to something, if I'm sitting talking with somebody who's considering entering a collaboration and asking if I had a single piece of advice for them, I would say, don't look at who you want to collaborate with. Don't look at what you want to create necessarily. Look at why.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And find somebody who shares that essential motivation and vision for it. Because that confluence of vision and desire, teamed, of course, with sort of commensurate levels of craft. Like, you want to make sure that whoever you're going to collaborate with is somebody who actually can show up and do what it is you're trying to do.
Right.
You need more than desire, more than shared motivation. But I think at its heart, sharing a reason, a why, is what is most likely to create for a collaboration that very quickly becomes trusting and trusted.
Right.
Yeah, and I'll say that, the other thing that I've really centered in this collaboration is a collaboration in and with and through joy. I think that's so important, even sometimes when it's really hard, because there were many a nights that it was like 4 a.m. and I'm like, I don't know what to do in this scene.
Right, sure.
Page 72.
And in those moments where, it all happens for us as artists, right? We get to that moment where we're so frustrated.
Sure.
And it was in those moments that I reminded and remembered, oh, I'm doing this out of love. I'm doing this because I actually do love this. And to Adrienne's point, we had a goal. The goal is to make sure people know who June Jordan is.
Sure.
And if that's the goal, that's the North Star, then my opinion of what I want in a moment or how I think a scene should be is moot. It's really about what does our shared goal need.
Yeah. So, and again, I know we touched on this, and I think we got away from it just with the delineation. 3 iterations. What changed? What grew? What were there things that didn't work? Were there things that were thrown out? I can only assume that it's improved.
Yeah.
So, and then how did you come to fruition of like, this isn't working? How did you throw the baby out with the bathwater, or like kill your darlings, for lack of, those popular phrases, if you will.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because I think one of the things that I began thinking about as we moved from iteration to iteration is the thing about poetry is you sit with poetry and you can read it, right? And it's not until, and June says this, a poem becomes a poem when it's said out loud, when you are performing it. And so the tricky thing about, I think, the first...
Say that again, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's just because it's brilliant, and I just want to hear it one more time. Sorry.
Yeah. The poem isn't a poem until it is performed, until it is living, and so we learned a lot. I think in that first iteration, as the poetry is happening, we're hearing it, and I think that in the development, I was like, oh, I get it. I understand this leap. I understand this transition. I understand how this poem moves from a poem about her mother or father to a poem about her mother. See, we're talking about parents. And I was making that leap because I literally was looking at the script. It made sense in my head. But then as I was watching because of course the director then immediately, because my favorite thing to do is to watch the audience watch the play. Right. And I started seeing, what are those moments that they lean out, that they disconnect, that they're confused by the transition. I think actually in most plays, all plays, the thing that loses an audience, the place you can lose an audience is the transition. The transition is actually the place that causes confusion. And so I think as we've moved from iteration to iteration, understanding the transition of thoughts, understanding how the audience is learning has been a core part of the process. And so that has been how and what has guided a lot of the edits.
What do you, I don't want to say it's a secret. What do you think, and it's not a trick, what do you think, the strategy, for lack of a better word, for transitions is? You know? Mm-hmm. For playwrights that here's a struggle that I've been presented with, if you will. Mm-hmm,
mm-hmm. I think about, as we transition from idea to idea, the tricky thing, and the thing that all playwrights are trying to do, right, is you want to leave just enough breadcrumbs where the audience wants to continue to chase after them, right, but they don't quite know where they're going. Your
breadcrumbs have been a popular topic in interviews lately, so really? It's funny. Yes, it's funny you say that. Yeah, so that's funny.
We're trying to constantly trying to think about how are we not leaving too many breadcrumbs on the ground, right, where the audience goes, I already know what's coming, and also how do you leave enough breadcrumbs so that they continue to follow the trail, and that gets that becomes tricky also when we get to a medium like poetry, because oftentimes there are preconceived notions about what poetry is, who poetry is for, and even our own listening to poetry. We as Americans we're barely cultured to speak another language, let alone hear and listen to poetry. Sure. And so I think a lot of the work in the transitions for me in that was asking myself, what does the audience understand? What don't they understand? What don't I want them to understand just yet? And what will I give them later?
Interesting. Yeah. That's a great approach. I like it. Yeah. I'm going to kind of go in a different direction real quick. So forgive me, Adrienne, because actually you may have some insight to this as well. But I as far as a artistic director goes, as far as like overseeing a theater, and I don't know where you find your not work, your we'll take work for whatever you're going to produce, and where do you find your productions? What's the approach? And what advice do you have for playwrights that might be submitting?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm really thrilled to be leading the Fountain Theater. It is, talk about a company, 35 years of really brilliant mission and history. It so happens that I wanted to come lead this company because my political values align with this company's political values. Sure. So when I am looking for plays as an artistic director for the Fountain Theater, that's what I'll say.
100%, yeah.
I am looking for, of course, our bread and butter at the Fountain Theater is socially conscious, politically motivated theater. That is our bread and butter. But I think more than anything, for me as an activist, I am always thinking about what are the ways in which we are exploring folks' humanity. Sure. And so I am really interested in plays that explore moments, that explore concepts of humanity that are uncomfortable, that don't have easy answers. Yeah. I think we are accustomed to sitting in theater with very easy answers and patting ourselves on the back and assuming we've done something. Sure. So what motivates me are those stories that I think, wow, this is a human experience that I have not heard yet. And this is a portrait of a human life that I think needs to be shared out. And so that's what I'm looking for in plays. I am looking for plays that are going to actually motivate audiences to do something. Not simply just to sit and passively think, but instead going to charge us to make a change.
So is this a seasonal thing? Did you accept submissions? Can people just send you things and say, hey, I just wrote this, I don't know if it's appropriate? Or do you get, like, are there guidelines that you guys have? Because again, like, I do a noir series, and I cannot tell you how many times I get plays that are not noir. Right. It's very specific.
Yeah.
So it's like know your audience, But so in that regard, what are you looking for? Can people just not blind submission, just send you things, and say, hey, look, I'm looking for a venue. I'd love to, if you can read my work. How does that work?
Absolutely. And there are any number of ways that it does work.
You're going to get inundated. Sorry.
Yes, please do submit to us. We read a lot of plays. Our staff reads many plays. And we are in the business of also developing plays. So for us, it's about, is there something there that we can actually help pour into and grow and develop? So yes, please do submit. And this actually, we are working on a really brilliant play. We're helping develop a play this season, Embers Born West by Maddox Pennington, a brilliant playwright. And that was a submission. Maddox, a friend of a friend, sent me his play and was like, you have to read this play. Nice. I've not read anything like it before. And sure enough, I hadn't either. And so we're developing and ultimately going to produce it. So yeah, and we want to celebrate and amplify Los Angeles-based playwrights. So yes, please do send.
So if they're not Los Angeles based, what if they're from Maine?
We'll accept Maynards as well. You can send a play as well. We're looking for really, really great plays.
Great, love it. I love it.
Yeah, submit.
Okay. So let's get to the final three questions that we always ask. We always wrap up on. And this goes to both of you. Okay. What are you working on right now? What's your next project?
Mine's easy because I'm actually going to be spending the next 2 months bouncing between this production and the piece I composed for In-Series in Washington, D.C.
That's right, yes, yeah.
And then the piece that you mentioned in the introduction that's being produced in Flint, Michigan is in the middle of May. So that encapsulates my life for the next 5 months.
Is there a ticket link for that yet?
There's a ticket link, obviously, for
100%, of course, yes.
The June Jordan Experience at the Fountain Theater. We open on the 29th of January.
Great, and we'll have that there. It
runs through the end of March. The In-Series production is titled For Women Serving Time.
Right.
In-Series is an opera company. If somebody searches for their website, tickets are available for that.
Okay.
It's in D.C. in late March and in Baltimore in early April.
Okay, so I can. There's a ticket link that I can include.
There is already for those.
Oh, great, perfect, great.
And then, the piece in Flint, Michigan is called The Awesome Difficult Work of Love. It's a community participation piece. It will be performed one time with members of the Flint community who come in and bring spoken word and instruments and movement and visual art. And we don't yet have a link, but it is going to be performed on May 16th. At the Unitarian Universalist Church in Flint.
Well, when you get the ticket link, feel free to shoot me an email and share it, and I will add that to the show notes in case anybody goes back.
It'll be on my website, which is myname.com, adriennetorf.com.
Hang on here. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm joking because we're going to get to that in a second. Okay. On that note, and I'm playing by the way, where can people find your work?
My work.
Both of your works, yes. Where can people find your work, whether that published or whatever? Yeah.
I have solo recordings. I put one out in April this past year.
Oh,
I have
nice,
a website, my name, adriennetorf.com. It's also available.
Again, don't get ahead of things.
It's also available on all the major download sites, Amazon, Apple,
Wonderful.
Spotify. It streams. And thank you in advance for bringing my music into
Absolutely,
your
of course.
We are producing an amazing season at the Fountain. It is our 35th season. It's
Congrats.
a season.
That's awesome.
Thank you. We are so excited. It is a season of revolutions and revelations. Every single play of our season is about amplifying, celebrating a revolution, and talking about all of the revelations that come from these revolutions. So I will be producing a very full season. That's what I'm going to be busy doing this season. I will be directing the last show of the season, which is a huge show which we have not announced yet, but I am so excited about.
Tune in.
Tune in. Go to our website. And then in my own directing career, I am directing a really beautiful one-man show called A Fine Madness at Woolly Mammoth Theater Company in Washington, D.C. I'll also be directing Somewhere Over the Border at Mosaic Theater Company. So yeah, it's a very busy year and thrilled to get to have the work.
Love it. Love it. And the final question, you'd think that Adrienne listens to this podcast on a regular basis. My final question that I always end with, and we already know that Adrienne is. Are you on the socials?
Yes, tell them about your social media.
I am. And it's a funny question because social media used to actually make me break out in hives.
It makes me break out in hives.
Private person, but a former colleague of mine who is really wonderfully knowledgeable and has a great spirit about social media.
Glad somebody does.
We reconnected. She totally disarms me. Once a week we get together. She says hi, takes some videos, and the next thing you know, people are going, "Wow, your Instagram is fabulous. How did that happen?"
What's your handle?
My handle? Oh my God! I don't know.
This is the point. That's why I asked the question. You better know it.
It's my name.
Yeah.
It's my name.
Uh-huh.
With an at sign
So
at the beginning.
it is at my name.
At Adrienne Torf. At Adrienne Torf on Instagram. How's that?
One more time, just in case, because I probably spoke over it.
Adrienne Torf, AdrienneTorf is my Instagram handle.
And what about the others? Do you have any others?
I have a Facebook page.
Okay. Do you want to share that as well, or is that like just
It's
personal?
My name. It's my name. I don't know.
So, Facebook.com/it's my name.
Right. And my website is also my name.
Okay. All right. That's good. All right. We're gonna include that. We're having a bunch of fun, you guys. So, all right.
You can find me at fountaintheater.com. You can also find me at my personal handle on Instagram, Raymond O. Caldwell, on Facebook, Raymond Caldwell, and my email, my website, RaymondOCaldwell.com.
I love it. Yes.
We look forward to talking with you again at some time in the future because we have already started working on our next piece.
We are, yeah. A new collaboration is already cooking.
I love it. I love it. Well,
Can
Raymond?
I drop a tiny,
Go, of course. Are you kidding me? Go. Plug away. Drop away.
It's a story about a 37-year search for biology.
Amelia Earhart.
Oh, no, we found her.
Is she aware?
Yeah, you could invite her on the show. Her website,
I keep going to the web. I keep going to the library.
And her Instagram handle is at Amelia.
Okay,
Amelia Fly.
Sorry, go ahead.
The piece that we have already started to work on, Raymond and I have, is about the 37-year search by an adopted person who finds both birth father and birth mother and siblings on both sides.
Love
that
it.
person being me.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
And not only is Raymond the ideal person to work on with this because of all that we have talked about already, but Raymond also has a fascinating family story that involves very unconventional sort of formulations of parenthood and childhood and siblinghood.
Well, we'll talk about that after we stop recording, because it sounds like we have lots of stuff in common.
Oh, really?
Oh, and then some, yeah.
Story might need to interview you for our...
Yeah, exactly. Completely different podcast, guys. So, so on that note, Raymond and Adrienne, thanks for coming on to this episode of Playwright Spotlight.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Again, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share the show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. In the meantime, until we see each other again, keep writing.